You're here, I hope, for surviving college with your faith intact. Let's begin with a prayer. Almighty and everlasting God, we thank you for the gift of the various vocations that you give us, particularly that of college students. We ask that you bless those college students who will be heading off to school this fall, particularly those who are going for the first time. Keep them faithful to your word, keep them faithful to their confirmation, and above all, keep them faithful to you. That as they go through the changes that occur in these next years, that they'll always be kept in your word. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Okay, so, like I said before, I don't think anybody else knew was coming in. I'm a campus pastor. I'm actually going to be doing less of that in the future, but for the last 9 years, it's been most of what I do. And I'm at the campus ministry that we have with the Michigan District and Zion Lutheran Church in Mount Pleasant at Central, and we're fortunate we got one of the best locations for campus ministry anywhere in the whole Missouri Synod, because our chapel is right in the middle of the campus. It's on private property, and the campus grew around us after the chapel was built in the 60s. So it's a pretty amazing thing. Next year is actually our 50th anniversary of being where we are. So my goal is to give you a survival kit, like it says, and it's going to include the following things. We'll talk about culture on campus, all of these aspects of life there, changes that you face. You'll be surprised, maybe. You don't think that you change as much as you will. These things. Going to church is very important to me, as you'll find out. Even choosing a college. And that's the parental stuff. Notice that it's at the bottom. You're not the least important people, but this is a youth conference, so we want to focus on our youth. So, okay. Back to the first thing, buzzwords, right? They're everywhere, including in this presentation. When we look at a lot of the worldview issues that you're going to face going to college, and some of this is less applicable if you're going to a Concordia. At a Concordia, especially one of our own, you're going to be surrounded, we pray, by people who have the same faith and who want to nurture you in the same faith as you speak that to them. But elsewhere, it's very different. So change, like I said, is the big one. Tolerance. This used to be a big buzzword on college campuses, and it's kind of given way to a new one called diversity. What would you, who can define tolerance for me? Yeah.
Accepting it.
Accepting somebody else for who they are, kind of thing. Anybody else? Yeah.
Like more what somebody can handle?
Yeah, sure. A tolerance is something that somebody can handle. Yeah, of course. Accepting others at a public university campus. What do you think they're getting at when they talk about we want to create and mold students who are tolerant for our culture? What do you think they're going for? Yeah. People who are accepting, people who are not judgmental, right? Kind of open-minded people. And we don't have any problem with that understanding of tolerance, right? But sometimes tolerance, as expected of the university culture, at a public university, is related a little bit to that change thing. There's an assumption that universities seem to have about all the students that come in, that the students arrive with a very narrow view of the world. And maybe in some cases that's true, where you don't have a whole lot of worldly experience, but that doesn't necessarily make a person intolerant just because they haven't traveled the world or met people from other cities in the state as much. The next step in this, at least what I've seen in campus ministry or on the public campus at Central, is diversity. How would you define diversity? In the back.
Having a very wide variety of people.
A wide variety of things, right? Yeah. Let's see. If you were to, you've heard people talk about that glass jar where you put stuff in the glass jar, and they're bigger and smaller, and all the stuff is in there. If you really wanted to, could you separate everything in that glass jar? Yeah, you could, right? So that, when it's all in there, that's kind of like a container that has a diversity of things in it, right? What if all the different things were different color liquids? Right? Would that be diversity? When you put it in there and mix it up? At Central, probably 6 years ago, they established an Office of Institutional Diversity. And they have a vice president of institutional diversity. So all of our tax dollars are paying for this office, and they hosted an art competition at Central, and the winning or the top designs, they were to design a poster to promote the Office of Institutional Diversity. The top designs were all displayed at the graduation exercises where our church volunteers as ushers. And so I was walking through the big student activity center where they hold the graduations and looking at the different signs, and I kept thinking, this is a little bit weird. And then I got to the winner, the grand winner, and I don't have a picture of it, I really should get one and put it in here, it looked like a giant V at the top. And falling into it were all kinds of, kind of negative words, names that you'd call people, from some that are, the N-word that we wouldn't even say, and then just some of them are kind of plainer, like white, Caucasian, all of those things, Christian, Muslim, all that stuff, and all those things are falling into that, and you start thinking, okay, I can see how this makes diversity, right? And at the bottom, all the words got smaller, and jammed together was the little word diversity. And at the bottom of that, you could see that what this person had created and designed as the best expression, and as the university chose as the best expression of diversity, it was a blender. The base was a blender. And so everything falls into it, gets mixed up together, and that's diversity. Is that actually diversity? Have you ever seen things going in a blender? Have you made a cake from scratch before and put it in the blender? Can you take the things apart again? To me, if something's diverse, and say I'm with a diverse group of people, I'm going to go into that conversation or event or circumstance or situation. We're going to interact with each other, get to know each other, and because we're tolerant people, I'm not going to say to the atheist, I'm going to take my shoe off and I'm going to beat you over the head with it because you don't agree with me. No, I'm not going to say that. I'll listen to them, and I pray that they listen to me. And then as we leave, maybe I understand atheists better. Maybe they understand Christians better. But is the Christian and the atheist supposed to merge and find some kind of thing? No, I don't believe so. But that seems to be behind what the university expects. Every university has a program designed that works partly with the classes you're taking and partly with the other activities of the university, where the goal is to make you into the ultimate graduate of X institution. At Central Michigan University, they want to create people who take care of one another. That's a big thing for them, but ultimately have a much more similar worldview. There's a good quotation that I've got coming up in a few more spots that I'll talk to you about in a second, that relates to how the universities are actually succeeding, and I don't think it's in a good way for Christians. Pluralism, related to diversity, right? Yep. Anybody have any questions about that?
What is pluralism?
Pluralism would be simply now the next one is related to it. Yeah, relativism. Relativism is it's all the same. Pluralism is that there can be a lot of different things that are all true, even though they conflict with each other. In a sense, it can be understood properly. Now, we don't believe that other religions are true, but we don't take that and belittle people or think that they're less human or less valuable people because of their beliefs. We would pray that through the Word of God they would change, but not expect them to just say that, no, you need to just accept all these other truths as true or true for you. Relativism would be the sense that, yeah, there's truth out there, but it doesn't really matter how you construct it. Everybody gets a piece of it kind of thing. Postmodernism? Anybody? Unlike the other ones that at least acknowledge truth, postmodernism said there's no truth. Nothing's true. You see a problem with that statement? If I say there's nothing that's true,
They say there's no truth, and you say, how do you know that's true?
exactly. If I say you cannot have anything that's true, there is no such thing as truth, that statement is a statement that expects you to believe it as true. If I say that, I'm saying that and I'm claiming that that's the truth, but that's not. If that's true, then what I'm saying about it defeats itself. This is the quotation that's worth thinking about. A 16-year-old in America has a more biblical worldview than the average 24-year-old in America. David Kinnaman wrote a couple books. One of them, You Lost Me, and another one called, I think it's Unchurched or something like that. Or Unchristian, I think it is. Yes, he's kind of a social scientist. And so he studies the data, but this is what he came to. What do you think that means? Do you think that means that 16-year-olds study the Bible more on average? Or are, I don't know, smarter people? You know, what do you think that means?
They're more open. They're more open and
16-year-olds?
like the 16-year-olds are sometimes more open to the different things. They take it in, they all like absorb it more.
True. They've definitely not been through the extra years of education too that formed their minds as much. The back first. Okay.
They're more tolerant of other people's views on religion and stuff like that.
Some of them are. What I'm trying to get at with including this quotation here is what typically happens. You know, how many of you go to church and the person who gets you up for church is mom or dad on a Sunday, or drives you to church is mom and dad on a Sunday? Yeah. How many of you wake up by yourself, drive yourself to church, whether you see mom or dad or not that morning? Only a few. Yeah. Which of these people would tend to be more in which mix? The 16-year-olds would tend to be more reliant upon the influence of their parents, yeah. And the 24-year-olds have probably moved out, gone to college. And that gone to college thing is where all these other things I was talking about before, kind of it all funnels together into this, that every university wants to put its stamp on the life and attitude and honestly the beliefs of every one of its students. And that type of data shows that the universities are, I believe, very successful at it. But the result for Christians, is that a good thing or a bad thing? That the average 24-year-old has a less biblical worldview than the average 16-year-old. I mean, when you're 16, how close were you to your confirmation? 2 years? 3 years? Right? Add 8 years to that. How many people think they open their... How many of you have opened your catechism since you were confirmed? I'm not going to look. Just think about it yourself. Yeah. It just sits there, you know, unless you have a reason. And usually, I mean, I'm not going to lie, it was when I, went through some behavioral difficulties of my own in early college that I was wondering, what does this mean for me? And that's when I opened up the catechism, and I should have gone to a pastor, but too guilty feeling of it, over it. But yeah, I think that the universities are very successful, and I don't think that's a good thing. So our task as Christians and in campus ministry is to live on the front lines and fight that, and stand up for who we are as Lutherans and the gospel that we have to share with the world, not only with the Lutherans, but everybody that shows up. So the things that happen to you in college, sudden adulthood, How many of you ever done your own laundry? How many of you are going to college without ever having done your laundry? That was me. I got a little mesh laundry bag and a jar of Tide, and I learned how to do laundry off the back of that Tide jug. No. Sudden adulthood, you'd be surprised how much your parents just do for you because they love you and they can do it so much easier than you can do it. And as our high schools and even middle schools have been so much more involved in getting you active outside of class, who here does extracurricular stuff in school? Every hand, yeah. Yeah. Nobody doesn't do anything anymore. You're always involved in things. So do you have time to help mom cook dinner? No. And sometimes does mom even have time to cook dinner? No. Do you have time to help do your own laundry? Do you have time? Do you have time to learn how to start the lawnmower if it doesn't work well? Do you have time to get a part-time job? I suppose many do have that. But yeah, sudden adulthood, a lot of responsibilities, and it happens overnight. You're packing everything up. Your mom's crying a little bit because you're going to be leaving. And then you go to the university. So maybe your mom can't even come with you because it's too difficult. Drop off. Dad, see you later. And then he goes off and cries. And then you're on your own. Loneliest time of my life was when my parents, I went to Concordia, Ann Arbor for undergrad. When my parents left. Oh, that was hard. Loneliness, right? Did you know that loneliness changes you? It does. You will do a lot of things out of loneliness. Well, you won't think it's out of loneliness, but you'll do a lot of things just because you're lonely that you wouldn't normally do. And being on your own at a big public university or even a small public university puts you in contact with a lot of other, what do you think the other people are? If you are lonely, do you think they are too? Yeah, absolutely. So you've got this huge mix of people who are desperate for a sense of belonging, friendship. Is that a good cocktail to make the good friends that you've had? You know, you've just left behind your friends in high school who you've known for how long? 4 years, 6 years if you went to middle school together, maybe 12 years if you went to primary school together. You know, you've known these people for a long time. How long does it take to build those relationships? All those years. Are you going to meet somebody new that day that you move in and be like, yes, friends figured out? No. Be careful. Think about it. Don't be afraid to say no to something just because you don't want to be the naysayer of the group. Be a stranger in a strange place. That's pretty self-explanatory. The unforeseen pressures. These are some of the things that I see some of our students at Central falling into. Ladies especially, you need to be aware that not all men want to treat you the way your father would want you treated. And at Central they have, I'm just giving the example of one state school, and I guarantee this happens all over the place, any school you go to. There are parties planned where there will be a lot of alcohol and a lot of kind of unknowns that could end up in your cup, and a lot of young women invited. At Central, it was called the Real Freshman Orientation. It always used to happen at the same house off campus, of course, and it was the Saturday night of what they called the Welcome Weekend, and it was upperclassmen preying on younger girls. These are things you want to be aware of. As soon as I found out what it was, I started having a Bible study at the chapel, and we have a church sign that has a digital scrolling thing, and I started advertising the Real Freshman Orientation is right here at Christ the King Lutheran Chapel, and some people didn't like that, but yeah, those are things that unfortunately happen. Maybe you would never go to a party like that, but what if you're in a room with 3 other girls and they all want to go to something like that? Is there pressure to go along? Have you spent the last 12 years of school learning from your teachers and the care police officers that come into the classroom and things that peer pressure is bad? I'm sure you have, right? Have people said peer pressure is bad? That's kind of thing, you know, don't give in to peer pressure. Have they told you that it gets better as you get older? Lies. It gets worse. It gets worse at every level. I hate to say that. There's a student that wrote an article in the CMU newspaper this year on the big marijuana holiday, April 20th, about how she doesn't smoke marijuana. She doesn't think it's good. She doesn't think it's good for people to take medicinally, which is legal in Michigan. And the way she was writing it was completely on the defensive. You think like 20 years ago, this person would have been the one that everybody thinks is sane, and anybody who thought otherwise was nuts. No, she feels intense peer pressure to partake in drugs, and even if she doesn't herself, how dare she think poorly of others for doing it, whether legally or illegally. And she said, all I want is people to not think badly of this just because this is my belief. And she said, she had that little remark that I thought that peer pressure was a thing that was something for the past, but no, it is absolutely heavier in college. And part of it is because of these factors. When you're first there, that's when you're most vulnerable. That's when it's hardest to stand up for yourself. That's when it's hardest to say, I'm going to get up and go to church on my own. Who's ever gone to church without their parents? A few, that's pretty good. Who's ever gone to church all by themselves in a different church that they've never been to? A few. Yeah, very few. That's what happens when you go to university, or it doesn't. And you know what it means if it doesn't? It means you're not going to church. Not good. Lifestyles in the dorm. So you take all those social things that I was just talking about, that cocktail of people who don't know each other, who are all lonely, and who are all desperately putting the best face forward in every interaction they have with everybody else. And now they live together 24/7. It's a great combination, isn't it? Nothing could go wrong. This is kind of just good advice. Arguing about lifestyles doesn't get you anywhere. If you want people to think highly of who you are and what you believe, live according to what you believe. Set the example. They'll ask you, why do you have everything together? Don't apologize for refusing to do what you know is wrong. Kind of a no-brainer, but you would be surprised how you feel like you're the one that's in the wrong when you say no. I'm really sorry, but I don't want to, go to the farm party where we're all going to put grandma's prescriptions that I stole from her cupboard and into the bowl, and we're all just going to take whatever we can grab out. In college, I'm not saying that people go to college are smart because that's not always the case. Even smart people do stupid things sometimes. Stand your ground. What's normal in the dorm is normal where else? That's right, nowhere. What's normal in the dorm is normal nowhere else. And avoid getting yourself into the situations where you are more tempted to get into things that you know you may not be able to have the willpower to say no to, whether it's with boyfriends, girlfriends, your roommates, whatever it may be. Has anybody seen that God's Not Dead movie? Some have. I haven't seen it. I should probably see it. Yeah. Arguing with your professors, is it wrong? No. Are you likely to convince your professor that he is wrong or she is wrong? Probably not in most cases. Probably not. But can you argue with them anyways? Might you have some good strategies to use when you disagree with a professor about something? And that's not going to come up in every class, but as I've been told by Lutheran students that come to our chapel, they're surprised how much their biology class has to do with the presidential elections every 4 years. So, big advice for just succeeding as a student, just go to every class. You would be surprised at how much of what is tested is directly related to what's been covered in the classroom. This should be no surprise. Professor thinks differently than you do. Be polite when you do disagree with a professor, and that's really important. Sometimes you can make a little point, or make a really big point by asking a question. Without making a huge assertion, without calling out your professor, sometimes you just have to ask a question to show the professor, sure, but even the other people in your class, that people have different ideas about what all these things mean that you're learning. So you don't even sometimes have to get up and yell at your professor. You can just ask a question, and that's enough. Your professor may shoot you down, but you'd be surprised at the people in your class who will come up to you afterward and say, "Yeah, I don't think the professor's right about that either, or I don't like the way the professor says." Now, does what the professor says go in the class? Yeah, it's his class, her class. That's how it goes. But you can still disagree. You can be polite about it. Your professors all have to have office hours, right? Anybody in here a university professor? How many office hours a week are you required to have? 4 hours a week. And if no students are there, and he does other work, I'm sure, right? Yeah, but they're there for you. You're paying for that. That's a good time to go and talk to the professor more about things. You have a question? Okay, good. Myths. These are things that you'll hear in the dorms. A lot of times, and I'm just going to throw up a few statements that people that you hear. You've probably heard them already, for the most part. Realize that when people use these things, they're trying to funnel a conversation into a point where they can just shut down an argument, or just stop it with something that, oh, this is so true that no one's going to disagree with me. It's like when, well, yeah. Searching for truth is more important than having truth. That sounds really wise, doesn't it? Sounds deep, mystical. What if you replace the word truth with lunch? How would you feel about it then? What's more important, truth or lunch? You don't go on the search unless you want to find it, right? Faith is a barrier to finding truth. Is that true? No, in my experience, people of faith care so much about truth that we keep digging in things. We read our scriptures to edify us in our search for truth. Of course, it doesn't mean that we all agree on the definition of this word or what that truth is, but it's no barrier to it. How about this one? That goes back to that postmodernism critique, right? There is no truth. Not if that statement's. What about this? Truth is not knowable. Same thing. Truth is relative, whatever you believe. That's a big conversation stopper, right? Doesn't matter what you believe. We're all going to the same place. Truth is whatever works, the pragmatic answer. So if it's true and it gets me out of the jam now, good. Or if it gets me out of the jam now, that's good. And then in the future, if I have to reword things and rework it, that's okay too. All those things ultimately lead to confusion, though, and not knowledge or peace or comfort. Who hopes to be social in college? Make friends? Your friends will change. You are very close to your friends from high school right now. That will unfortunately change. And that's not always a bad thing, but if you're going to make room in your life for a lot of new friends who will probably be even closer to you than your friends from high school, it means some of your high school friends will, not necessarily taking a back seat, but just as you grow apart, there's a distance there. That happens. That's normal. It's kind of like when you get married. All of a sudden, most of your friends become your married people that you know rather than the single people that you know. And the single people are like, why are you always with the married people? You'll understand when you get married. And be patient with your friends when they get married. Big change in your friendships. Just talked about that. Dating on a whole new field. Do your parents care about who you date? Yeah, of course they do. Are they there to talk about that with you in college? Not likely. So it doesn't mean that you just need to always feel guilty about the people that you're with, but remember who you are. Remember where you came from. Who wants to get involved in things in university? How many, okay, Central Michigan University, I keep using Central because it's the one I know best. How many student organizations do you think exist at Central, which is a school that has an enrollment of just undergrad, about 20,000 students? 400 is a guess. 600 is a guess. It's more. A lot more. 1,500? There are almost as many groups as there are students. And a lot of students are involved in multiple groups, and some of them are just kind of jokey groups, but yeah, there's like more than 10,000 groups that are registered with the university.
What's jokey groups?
Like, there is a Boy Meets World Association Appreciation, or Boy Meets World Appreciation Society. Yes, and then some people responded by creating a Topanga Appreciation Society, but there's a pipe smoking club, which I really liked. Part of that, but all the teams count. All the intramural teams count. There's activist organizations for people who care about every part of science. There's all kinds of pre-professional organizations. There's fraternities and sororities, all kinds of things. And you can be involved in things, but what's the cost? I heard it. Your time. Yeah, sometimes the money, but the big one is your time. Be very careful with that. That is a huge risk, especially for freshmen. Because remember, if we go back a couple slides, you remember what you are as freshmen? Very lonely, right? There's a big loneliness factor. And what's a good way to fill that void? Find people who like the same things you like, right? There are church groups, all kinds of things. If you were the president of a club and you had to design the homecoming float and actually build it and construct it, who would you ask to do a lot of the work, the grunt work? Artists would be involved in the design, but who is going to put in all the hours? Probably the youngest people in the group. Who is going to be most willing, I should say, to do that? The freshmen. Because who is the most desperate to have standing in the group? Usually the freshman. And what do you think a freshman is willing to sacrifice? A good night's sleep? That's nothing for a college student. I'll give up sleep for hanging out with all these great friends, making me feel like I belong to something. What else would they sacrifice? Maybe a bit of their homework? What percentage of their homework is okay? Yeah, but there's consequences, is what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, there's consequences when you make these sacrifices, because when you stop doing your homework, or you stop going to class, or you stop sleeping, and then you have to sleep when you should have been in class, it comes down to this question of what sacrifice are you willing to make when you're involved in a group and you get over your head? You've made a commitment not just to the activity, but also to all the people involved in that activity who are your new friends, right? Are you more likely to sacrifice that or your personal grades, do you think? Where would you fall on that? Be honest with yourself. You don't have to tell me. I know where students usually end up falling on that. They're more than willing to take a lower grade in a class or fail a class sometimes because it means that they are fitting in, belonging, comfortable at their new place. My rule of thumb is don't commit to anything, nothing at all in the first 6 weeks, unless you're there on a scholarship for that very thing. So if you're a football player, don't tell the coach, oh, my pastor at this conference said that I really shouldn't. I'll come and practice in 6 weeks after about games 5. No, that is not what I'm saying. No club or group or anything worth joining will insist that you sign on the dotted line before you're ready. If you say, I need 6 weeks, they're like, okay, that's fine. And they may have rules that you can only do some things within the club until you're a full member, but that's okay. They should also not have anything that is secret about being in the club that you don't know about before you join. There should be nothing that they hide from you. If they're not fully transparent, they're not worth joining. If they won't let you evaluate the club for as long as you want, I say 6 weeks is a good time. But if they won't let you evaluate it for as long as you want, it's not worth joining. They're interested in you for something other than just you. Greek life is particularly tricky this way. Fraternities and sororities often have secret ceremonies. Sometimes they have ceremonies and activities that contradict your Christian faith, where there's a sorority at Central where the members are expected to be put into their caskets with the jewelry of the organization arranged in a certain way. And that's part of their secret stuff. I know that because I knew a student who was involved in it, and she wanted me to look at the stuff. How many students do you think, and I've been at Central for 9 years, how many students do you think that I've had that have joined a Greek frat or sorority who I've seen in church again? 9 years. There's one, and I saw her twice in the next 2 years of her college career. So one student twice out of probably 60 students that I know of that are LCMS Lutherans. Frats, it's not just sometimes that it conflicts with your beliefs. Being in Greek life is like having a whole other degree that you're chasing after for the amount of work that you're doing in it. The hours that your fraternity or your sorority demand of your time, something like 18 to 20 a week. On top of that, you're not getting paid for it. In fact, you're usually paying for that privilege. I can't think of a good justification to be involved in a social fraternity or sorority. There are some pre-professional ones, like there's a pre-music one, a pre-accounting one, or a pre-business one. Those things are different. They use the Greek stuff to symbolize the collegiate climate, but the social ones, I don't know a good reason to join one for anybody. That's just my opinion. That's a really good way to be social, and it's pretty low pressure. You go to church. You know, how many Lutheran pastors sound like salespeople? Hopefully none. Why sell what God gives away for free, right? Yeah, I can't stress that enough. Going to church. That's the next slide, and the next one too. Yeah, go to church. Find a campus ministry or a congregation nearby. Think about it. You've been taken away when you go to college from your friends, your family, your home church, and been surrounded by people who have a variety of different beliefs than you, who are strangers, and you see very little of anybody that's younger than 17 or older than 22. You just don't. The people serving you in the cafeteria, it's not the old lunch lady. It's one of your classmates who needs the part-time job. The people working in the mailroom, people working in the bookstore, the people working at the Starbucks in the UC. They're all your peers. Where's a place that you can go and find people who have little babies with them, teenagers, grown-ups, people your parents' age, people your grandparents' age? A church is a place where you find people of a wide variety of ages. That's one of the things that the college students that come to Central and come to our campus ministry really appreciate. They really appreciate that on Sunday morning, they get to see kids. They get to see grandparents. And the people in our congregation, we've been doing this a long time, they love interacting with the college students too. They realize that they're lonely, that they're far away from home. They realize that sometimes these people, that's the first time they've come in our church. That may be the only time they ever come in our church. We want to give them, ideally, a good impression of the church, in addition to the gospel, of course, so that if something bad happens during their time at college, they know there's a place they can go. And you think about it, when you're 18 to 22, that's the time when a lot of people, if they haven't lost a grandparent yet, will lose a grandparent. It's not easy. Those of you who've lost a grandparent, you know how hard that was the first time. It's never easier going forward, but how would you like it when your mom's not there and your dad's not there? There are different kinds of campus ministries that you'll find. Christ on Campus, that's like the higher things thing. LCMSU, that's what, I know I was supposed to wear the purple shirt, but hey, it's almost the same color, right? But this is LCMSU, and we got it done in the central colors. The Missouri Synod, about 2 years ago, started putting a lot of energy into campus ministry again, and I'm thankful because it raises the awareness of people everywhere. LCMSU has a bunch of chapters. You can find there's a link, and I think I posted it. No, it's not here. It's in another slide. But an LCMSU chapter is a congregation, whether it's only for college students or whether it's a town congregation that's really close to a college. They have an active outreach to college students. They have stuff for you to do to get involved in. Not just worship. They have Bible studies available for you, activities, and most of the things when they're there for college students also involve what? What would you think churches would do to make it easier for you to come? Food. Most of these things involve food. A lot will also offer transportation depending on the setting. In our case, transportation would be superfluous because we're right in the middle of the campus. It's very rare that we have a problem with that. A contact congregation is a church that's in the area and college students attend that church. Is that okay to go to when you're in college? Do you need something different from what you've had the last 17 years? No, you don't. It's absolutely fine. And in fact, if you go to that church and you say, hey, pastor, I would love to have, I'd love to get a little bit of an outreach going on the campus where I'm going to school. I know a few other Lutherans. Can we get a Bible study going or something like that? The pastor will say, oh, no, hold on. I don't know how to preach to college students. I don't know how to do Bible studies for college students. Well, here's something you can tell the pastor. What kind of Bible studies do you think a college student would want to hear? Would they be different from what the pastor would be doing for adult Bible class? No, not at all. In January, I became the senior pastor at the church, and I had to start doing adult Bible class on Sunday morning for people. And I was doing all the campus ministry work and all the pastoral work at a church with like 550 people. That's quite busy. And I had to come up with Bible studies on pretty short notice. So what I did was I used a Bible study I did with the college students and just did it. And the church members, number one, they were none the wiser, except some of them now know. But they were none the wiser. They're like, wow, we didn't know that you could do these Bible studies this way. This is a great Bible study. I said, it's the same thing that I'm doing with the college students. So, yeah. These are some non-Lutheran ones. You might be tempted to go to them. I discourage them because even though they say they are non-denominational and have no theological impetus either way, they do. Cru is the new name for the Campus Crusade, which was the Billy Graham stuff. IV stands for InterVarsity. For the most part, they have a very low view of sacraments, if any view at all. And as Lutherans, word and sacrament, those things go together. In the means of grace, we don't shortchange that stuff. So if there's nothing else, I don't know. I would just say find that contact congregation and go to it. And if the pastor there doesn't have the time, or there's no other college students there where you're going to get the special attention, don't worry about it. Just plug yourself into the adult stuff. You want to sing in the adult choir. They're not going to mind. This is a good one. Who of you has ever met a pastor that's going to be your pastor without your parents around? Not a lot, but I encourage you to do this. Make this like a priority when you get to your campus. And then, of course, go to church. Here's one. Most of you who are going to college in the fall have already chosen, right? Some of you in high school, who does not know where they're going to go to college? Okay, this is for you. What do you think the biggest factor in choosing a college is for families and students? Money. Oh, boy. There we go, yeah. I was going to say programs, but yeah, cost. Cost is the big one. Financial aid, scholarship availability. The programs would be another one, right? If you want to be a teacher and they don't have an education program, you're not a good idea to go there, right? Location, near or far from home. What else? Anybody from Ohio here? No, I'm just kidding. No, I know. But you're getting right to where I was going. Oh, no. Athletics. Yeah, some people like athletics. Our football team, they see this guy's got a wallet for Ohio State. Yeah, filthy lucre. Some people do it for the sports teams. They've always been a Notre Dame fan. Residence life, the campus life. I mean, why do you think Calvin College allows us to have a Lutheran conference on their campus? And yes, we're paying for the rental of it, but they're thinking a high school youth conference, all these people are Christians, we're a Christian college. It's kind of a no-brainer for them, right? Big recruiting thing, because you get to see all of the things that they have featured and available for students to take advantage during the school year. Is that athletic center something else or what? It's beautiful. It's better than what they have at Central. More stuff to do there, bigger. It's amazing. What about that? That's something that almost nobody ever thinks about, where you're going to go to church. That should be the first thing you're thinking about. You can get a degree almost anywhere. And wherever your program is offered, there are other places that probably offer the same program. And if there's no church in one of them, look at another one. It's really important. If your parents have spent the time training you in the faith, bringing you to church to be trained in the faith, I pray it's a priority for you as well. This is an important one here. You can connect with LCMSU. That's the website, but you can more easily find it just by going to the Missouri Synod webpage and clicking it'll be up in the top right where there's a locator, the locator things. One of the locators that they have now is a campus ministry, located campus ministry. You can look and find in a few seconds if the schools that you're looking at have an active campus ministry, and it's as easy as that. And if you want to do a little bit more and enter in some data, they'll take your information and they'll pass it on to the campus pastor there, and then he'll reach out to you and invite you to get involved when you come. It's a pretty good system. These are some pictures, shameless self-plugs right there, of the last LCMSU conference, the Taboo Conference that was in January this last year in St. Louis, Missouri. And it's basically higher things for college students, the way I describe it. I'm just about to the end. We had a little note for parents here. So your best influence when it comes to your kids is your example. And most parents, if you want your kids to be active in the church when they go to college, should you be sleeping in on Sunday mornings and skipping church, making it a low priority for your family? No. What are you most likely to do if you're a teenager going into college? If your parents don't think church is very important, are you going to think church is very important? No. Think about that when you have kids too. Sit down and talk about your expectations. Despite what the world says, you're still the most important person in your children's life, especially as far as the faith goes. Tell them you expect them to go to church, especially if you're paying for this. Ask your home pastor about campus ministry where your child attends. You'd be surprised your home pastor probably knows. And if he doesn't, call me. I'll help. Go to the campus ministry when you're there for orientation or when you're visiting the campus. Introduce your son or daughter to the campus pastor. It's a huge thing. Actually, go back a bit. When you do that, though, you need to make the introduction and then stop talking. It's very important, from my experience, that the student makes a connection to the campus pastor way more important than if the pastor and the parents make a connection. You can expect that every time you go there, you'll be welcome to that church as parents. No problem. but the person that pastor needs to be looking after those next 4 years is your son or daughter. Those types of conversations are usually pretty awkward, when you meet somebody new for the first time, especially when it's like someone with authority and I'm going to be a freshman, I'm meeting professors with doctorates and all this stuff. And these other people all seem smarter than I am. I've done it for years. I work through the awkwardness of the conversation, and we try to find a point of connection, something that we have in common, something memorable, so that hopefully they'll come back in the fall. And it'll be awkward, but I just encourage you parents to just wait it out. Let your son or daughter make that relationship, and it gets better. Go up on a weekend and make it a priority while you're there to go to church together as a family, just like you do at home. And let your child go no helicopter. I didn't have time to include it, but there was a big, it made a lot of noise on Facebook about 3 weeks ago, that helicopter parenting is one of the big influences in college student depression and success rates or lack of success rates. So just be careful. Professors probably have received phone calls from parents who are not happy about the kids' grades, things like that. If your mom's calling your professor about your grade, step on the brakes. Also, refer your student to the chapter. And last but not least, do the evaluation. We are here. Breakout B, you text this number. That's the thing, 187. Does anyone have any questions before we're done? I was going to look at it. What time are we at here? 2:53. We got like 7 minutes for questions. Yes?
I'm going to a technical school for looking at pastry arts.
Yeah.
Am I any more or less likely to run into this kind of thing when half of my classes are going to be in a kitchen lab?
I would think that's a lot less likely. Yeah. But you never let your guard down. Maybe in those labs you'll have more time for conversation with your classmates. And you pay as much attention to what you're saying as what you're hearing. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
All Lutheran churches on campus, they're not all Missouri Synod.
Correct. Yeah. You have to take each one as it is. If you go to some campuses will have multiple Lutheran churches. Find the Missouri Synod one.
Because I'm going to my hometown in Eugene, Minnesota.
Yeah.
So technically I'm staying home, so I get to go to my old church.
Yeah. That's the best.
Still a lot.
That's the best. If you're going to school and you're at home, and you already know your pastor, you already know all the people at church. You don't have to worry about a ride to church. That's the best. If you can't have that, the campus ministry exists to take care of you and be a church home for you while you're away from home. But yeah, in your situation, if there are a bunch of other students that are going there, invite them to come to your church. You meet other Lutherans, or if they're going to, is there another campus ministry that's not your church
Well, they have
in town?
a couple Catholic ones.
Okay. But if there's another Lutheran one, you might go there for some activities or something like
They
that.
have two Lutheran ones on campus and stuff. But
Yeah, that's something that you visit and evaluate as you go. But I encourage you to stick with the Missouri Synod ones, of course. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Well, I thank you all for coming.